Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Seth, one of the co-hosts of Engaged Podcast, and I'm here to give you today another great episode of Engaged Podcast. But before we can get into the episode today, a few little announcements. First of all, if you are new to the podcast, go ahead and like and subscribe. Subscribe. Whether you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Overcast, Podcast Addict, wherever, go ahead and subscribe. That way you won't have to look for us every Thursday. We're going to be, boom, right there on your phone, ready for you to listen. If you are watching on YouTube, go ahead and like and subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't already. Make sure you hit that bell. That way you can get notified every time we come out with a new video on our YouTube channel. We're trying to figure out a way to continue the music review segment that we were doing. For whatever reason, we just keep running into this copyright issue. And even though it's considered fair use because we're not claiming the art to be ourselves, we're not claiming it that it's ours. It's considered fair use because we're making a commentary on it. We're breaking it down. We're discussing it. We're not just playing it. I know there's ways to get around it. We just haven't figured out exactly how to do that yet. So if you are someone who you do music reviews and you know the secret to getting around all of this, and you figure out a way for YouTube to stop taking down your videos, then please let us know, because every video we do just keeps getting taken down, and we're trying to figure out a way to bypass that. But if you enjoy those, stay tuned, because we will find a way to get those back up on for you to watch and to listen to. But with all that being said, our guest today is a very good friend of mine. I know him through my father. Me and him met years ago at a pastor's conference, and this guy right here goes to show that what the stereotypical vision of what people think of whenever they hear of the word pastor isn't always the case. It's just like any other profession. Not all teachers, not all librarians are the exact same person. Not all counselors are the same person. It's important that every type of profession is made up of unique individuals who are themselves doing that profession. And a pastor is no different. His name is Fred Hoover. So Fred Hoover he's such an amazing guy. And when I thought of, different people we can interview in 2021, he was one of the first people I thought of, because this guy has not only a wealth of knowledge and wisdom to offer, but he has such a cool background and such a cool story, and just a way to him that I think so many people, especially my generation, especially us millennials and the Gen Zers, we can get so much wisdom. We can get so much knowledge from listening to a man like Fred. So without further ado, give it up for our friend, Fred Hoover.
To have Reverend Frederick Hoover on our podcast today. Here, Seth and I are welcoming you from the Engaged Podcast Studios here at Faith Presbyterian Church. Just a little bit about you. We see here that you are the pastor at Christ Memorial Lutheran Chuch, and that's in Malvern, Pennsylvania. So we're in Hermitage. About how far away is that?
About 5 hours. It is. We're about maybe 40 minutes west of Philadelphia.
Okay.
That's close.
So we're sandwiched in between.
Go ahead.
What were we gonna say?
I was gonna say, is that anywhere?
Yeah, we're near Lancaster.
Go ahead.
We're trying to get. We're near Lancaster's about maybe 45 minutes west, and Philly's about 45 minutes east. So we're kind of in the middle.
Okay, yeah, that's close to like Westchester, Kennett Square, all that.
Yeah, Westchester is 5 minutes down the road.
Yeah, okay. I've been there before. It's such a nice area. We used to live in Lancaster too we lived there for about 5 years.
Yeah.
And that's such
Yeah, and you have relatives.
Yep.
Is it your dad's sister that lives down in Kennett, right?
My mom's sister. Yeah, they lived in Kennett. They just moved. But yeah, that's such a nice area.
Oh, it's great.
Do I address you as Frederick or Fred?
Fred's fine.
Okay.
Cool.
So Fred, were you always a pastor?
No formalities? No. I started out as a working in warehouses, probably about 6 years out of high school, playing in bands. And that was kind of my thing, doing a lot of recording, a lot of writing, kind of the stereotypical kind of rock guy, wanting to make a career of that. And kind of along the way, God stepped in and said, "Hey, I got a little something different for you." And that's kind of the beginnings of my story as a church guy.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. One of the things that I always really appreciate about you, so you and I met at the Eastern Convention for the Lutheran Chuch about 3 years ago now, maybe.
Yeah,
that's about right. And I actually remember, I don't know if you remember this or not, but you stood out to me because I wore a band t-shirt, and it was probably not the best choice to wear at a pastoral convention, but it was a Metallica shirt. And you walked up to me, introduced yourself, said that you knew my dad, and you and I geeked out over Metallica, Red Hot Chili Peppers, and I think you and I were both talking about how the Injustice for All album doesn't have any bass on it. And it's so, I was like on cloud nine, because I'm like, here are my two favorite things coming together with this individual. You have God and in the Bible, and then also Metallica. And I was like, whoever this guy is, like, I want to be his best friend.
Yeah, and that's just it. The music thing has been so weird for me over the years. It's just a funny story. So I'm in church. I cut my hair off, and I'm like trying to be the Bach-loving Lutheran guy who's reading Martin Chemnitz from the 1500s, and I'm going to be very astute and very scholarly and things like that. But there's this like thrash kid, who loves Anthrax and, was listening to, bands like Testament and, Raven and, all these crazy bands. And that's sort of, and I thought, like, I can't be that guy. I've got to be the church guy, So I remember I sold almost every bit of my gear. I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna, we're going to listen to Stephen Curtis Chapman and we're going to, the Great Adventure, we're going to do all that stuff. We're going to saddle up, horses. And we're going to do all that stuff. And I love that stuff, but don't get me wrong. But, the metal guy was like, God's like, dude, God can use you to talk with people who most pastors won't touch with a 10-foot pole because they're afraid. I see the t-shirt. I'm like, hey, dude, let's talk. And other people are like, no, that's Avenged Sevenfold, man. I can't, there's a devil thing on his, on his Kill Switch t-shirt, and I'm like, let's look beyond that. And in fact, in a lot of those bands, if you look at the lyrics, there's a lot that we can talk about with people, a lot of anger, a lot of, we got the answer, and that's kind of where I've kind of come around and said, you know what, I don't necessarily have steady die to some of that dark stuff is going to be best for me, but I get what they're saying. And they might be just complaining, but we've got, we've got the answer. We know, we got the light for that darkness. So,
Awesome.
So now I listen to Disciple instead,
Great band.
So Fred, do you think that most metal bands are coming from a place of anger?
I think a lot of them are. I can think back to when I was a kid, and I always felt kind of like nobody got me. Just the typical, you don't know me, old guy, and yelling at people and just, making my hair as crazy as it could be. And, that shock value, like, I'm going to shock you. You're going to notice me. and honestly, when I look back, it wasn't so much anger for me, but a lot of it was disappointment. I really believe this. I believe God has been kind of working on me even in those dark days. I can look back and hear him saying, there's something bigger than all that anger and getting upset and trying to show the world, that you're gonna prove them all wrong. There was always just sort of that nudge in the back of my heart and back of my mind going, there's just something bigger, and you'd see the way people treat each other. And I think I was, in a lot of times, more angry at that. Because when all was said and done, I was always trying to be a good guy. And a lot of metal guys are. I hear this from so many people that go, man, that dude looks scary, but he'll go to bat for you, man. He will, some of the, like all the friends I have that are metal guys, yeah, they curse like a sailor, and you don't want them on this church podcast probably, because you'd have to censor every other word. But like I have conversations with them, and they listen to the music because it's exposing something in the world that's in us, but it's also in the world. So I mean, for Christians, like the whole sin thing, is there anything more powerful than God's grace and all of that? So I'm like, man, that's like perfect for metal. There's nothing more metal than that. I mean, the Satan thing is kind of lame if you ask me, right. Because it's kind of a joke, and what he has is always so much more powerful. So I kind of wish like guitars and Marshalls won out over organs and pianos. I think that we should have fought harder maybe to make that, you know what I'm saying? I'm like, come on, man, where was, like we got to convert Yngwie, we got to convert like Steve Vai, and if we can just convert these guys, then the music will match the message perfectly. So yeah, anger, totally. But I think a lot of it, that's social. A lot of the metal kids are socially awkward as well, and have difficulties. They're trying to find themselves and who they are, I think, a lot. And, they find a willing family who will just take them in, and they'll be brothers for life. I've been listening to this stuff for, 30, almost 40, way back. And I still remember first concerts with guys. And I have a guy back in New Jersey who I talk with all the time. And it's just so cool. It's like, we could stop talking for 20 years and get back and instantly be talking for days about, guitar stuff.
So what were the origins of the concerts for you? Who were you going to watch? Are we talking early 80s, late 70s?
Yeah. So probably for me, it's like 80, early 80s, probably. So I graduated high school 85, because you any kind of, so right around that time, that's like Metallica Kill 'Em All is coming out. Hasn't come out yet. I actually got to see them at a roller rink in Old Bridge, New Jersey, which was just so cool, with a band called Raven from Britain. I used to go, it was so cool. I used to go to a place called Rock and Roll Heaven. Johnny Z was the guy who started Megaforce Records.
Okay.
So,
yep.
So, we're a bunch of kids. We didn't have driver's license. We didn't have a way to get to this little flea market in Old Bridge, or actually East Brunswick, New Jersey. And so we would bum a ride from whoever was willing. I would spend like my paper route. I worked at a bakery too. And I'd spend all my pennies on the latest thing from England or from wherever. So Slayer comes out and he's like, oh, Johnny would be there, hey, you got to check this out. This is incredible, and so his word was law. So we would grab it, and and then Metallica came in. So that was kind of Sabbath was my first concert ever. And then, and then it was like Metallica. I saw Anthrax, and simply because I was at that sort of ground zero for that, what's called the Old Bridge Militia now. I was kind of like a part of that deal. I was one of the younger kids there with my denim jacket with with an Accept painting on the back of it that I did myself that looked terrible. All my buttons and patches, and it was so much fun. And I probably had 400 albums, like vinyl, of just everybody throughout the world. It was just so much fun.
Very, very cool. Very cool. Now, do you find that you have trouble fitting into your pastoral friends because you have this unique perspective on things like the world between metal and the Bible being connected? Because a lot of pastors that I know that went to school with my dad clearly do not have that viewpoint or that background. So do you find yourself having trouble, trying to fit in with that group?
Yeah, it's kind of tough. That part of me doesn't really get to come out and play, if you will. It has to sort of stay home in some ways. I know your dad's like real open to, talking about stuff like that. He just, I think he finds it fascinating. He's like, man, this guy's weird, so for some, I'm like, man, that dude shouldn't be here. And others, it's like, oh, he's a breath of fresh air. I like, he's, I kind of chalk it up like, this is being me. As I talked earlier, like I tried to shelve all that, but God was like clear, like, what Paul says, remember who you were. What does he say? When you were called. Remember that. Like I picked you, not the future version of you, but I picked you, like the guy back then. And it took me a while to get back to that and say, there's parts of that lifestyle, obviously, a whole lot of it that I'm not going to drag into this world. Right. And I don't have to unpack. You guys know what those are. The rock and roll part's the only part you can keep, right? The sex and any of those drugs and all that stuff. Not applicable. But yeah, it's tough sometimes. And I also have a different approach. I think I find myself in a very conservatively liturgical church that's very old school with the organ and a lot of other things. And that's difficult for me to navigate as well. Because I'm not, I'm more at home with this guy right here. The church I started in Indiana, man, I was playing lead guitar every week, and I play now at we have a modern service that I play at, with our team. And that's been a great outlet. But again, I try to let them do their thing and not sort of take over. I'm called as a pastor, not a guitar player. So I try to keep that first, and let the other folks use their gifts. And I'll be the band dad and just kind of help them out, but I'm more of the band dad. I mean, that's kind of how I see myself, just kind of fun.
Fred, how long have you been in ministry? I have a follow-up question right after that too.
Sure. Yeah. I've been a pastor. I think I've gone on like 22 years now.
Okay.
So
you went through a process where it was like a pendulum, right? Where you accepted Christ and you said you kind of got rid of everything. And then the pendulum kind of swung over to find kind of who you are as a person more. What's that process? What was that process look like? And if there's someone out there that's struggling with that, what advice would you give them?
Yeah, great question. For me, it was, again, remembering that passage, who are you really? And my wife helped me out with a lot with this, she's like, cause she's like polar opposite from me, she's from like the Midwest, very shy. And I'm like from New Jersey and I'm on 10 all the time. That's just who I am. And so she'll remind me that that's who you are. You never use it as an excuse to be rude or nasty, but that's who you are. And I realized that for me, I realized I was doing a lot of that kind of trying to be somebody else with a bad motivation, right? So I went to college. I'm probably 24 years old or whatever, and and then I get into seminary, and I'm still trying to figure out who I am. I get out into a church out in California, little country church, and I was kind of one of these pastors that unfortunately there's too many of them within our Lutheran circle, within my circles, who are everyone else is an idiot. We've got it right. I know you guys have never heard that, and I know Presbyterians never think that way.
I think
everyone else is heterodox.
I think we're king of that list.
You guys are, because we are. No, we are. We've got a lock on that, man.
No, we're right and you're wrong.
We've cornered the market. We have the patent pending on that puppy, man. Like
nobody else loves Jesus that could have a different view than I. It's got to be.
Yeah. And I was that guy, man. I was like that. Like, I remember, here's where it happened. It was like, I can remember I was in the church fellowship hall. I'm teaching a class on church bodies in America, right? So our publishing company puts out this study, and it's, here's what the Presbyterians believe, and here's what the Methodists believe, and it gives you some history. It's kind of cool. There's a little church history there, which is awesome to learn. But each time it was like, I took it and was like, well, this is how we're right and they're wrong. And unbeknownst to me, my congregational president is there with his wife, who was raised Mennonite Brethren. Okay, that was like the dominant church in the area where I was at. So I am just going to town, man. I'm being so uncharitable. I'm just every caricature. I'm being a total jerk, nasty, and thinking it's great. Like, I'm being like Paul against the church, but my own people, like friendly fire. This isn't. And there was a retired pastor, Pastor Jim Rush. I'll never forget him. He was like a grandpa. He was a retired guy. He had been an atheist his whole life. His wife had prayed for him. He came to faith, as he told me. So he comes up to me after this Bible. He takes about 2 or 3 sessions, and then he says, "Fred, can we talk?" And I'm like, "Uh-oh." When an old guy sits you down, you're going to school, right? You're going to be in trouble. And he said, and he just asked me, he said, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm teaching a Bible study. I'm teaching the truth," I think is probably what I said. And he said, "Really? No, what are you doing?" He goes, "Do you know, like, this guy's wife and family, like, may be struggling with some of the stuff that you're teaching, and that this is, maybe you're like, it feels like you're punching her in the throat like every week." And I was like, ooh, and at that moment I was like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? Like, and I began to think, like, is all my preaching about that? Is all my study about, is it about me being right, being the guy that wins the argument? And I was like, oh my goodness. So that was like the pendulum, which, right the other direction. Like, wait a second. A lot of what I'm doing is just to be the smartest and to do it. And a lot of that just came from, I think, honestly, and pastors we don't do this well. We don't look at ourselves. We fix other people, right? You come in to talk to me. Don't you be talking to me. I'll talk to you, right? I'll give you the scripture, and God's going, dude, look in the mirror. Like, we need to talk. You need to work through some stuff. High school, I was the worst student. I had a lot to prove. I was like a miserable learner and all this other stuff. So school was like climbing Everest for me to get this stuff in, because I was not a book guy, and suddenly I got to learn Greek and Hebrew. I'm like, oh, great. So that jacked me up, I think, internally, spiritually. And then Pastor Rush comes in and says, I'm going to be gentle and loving and kind. And I'm going to talk to you and say what no one else is saying. And it was like, at that moment, I began to look at him like, yeah, I'm picking fights everywhere on the internet was just getting started back then. And there was I think it was a Baptist dude who hated Luther. He was like a Spurgeon. So it was like Spurgeon squaring off with Luther, right? So I found this guy's little bulletin board back in the day. And his whole sole purpose in life was to take down other churches. He thought Billy Graham was wrong. He thought, people that everyone would sign off on. He was like, no, that guy's apostate. And I'm like, I'm that guy. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm that guy. Like, I hated that guy, but I'm that guy. And I've never been so thankful for someone to sit me down as I've been with him. Because I don't know, man. I don't think I'd be talking to you guys right now. I don't think I'd be here. I'd probably working at a Sunoco. Honest, I'd be the guy that you buy your smokes off of, and, probably, man. And I'd probably be alone and miserable, and hating life. And it would be nothing about Jesus, nothing about forgiveness. Because it was in that moment that God was like, it's about me. Like, it's about my love for you. It's not about you being right. It's about me being right. And that was like, whoa, eyes open. And I've been kind of learning And at the same time, it sort of helped me to see, okay, it's about me being a forgiven child of God, not about what letters are after my name or any of that, because none of that matters. And so I would say that somebody who's struggling with all of that, with their identity and stuff, you got to go, it's got to be rooted in Christ. Otherwise you're going to work too much. It's going to be about you. It's going to be about your, even those good things, right? Knowing things and having degrees, and that's all good stuff. It's great stuff. But in the end of the day, like, it's really not about any of that stuff. It's about what he's done for us. Because if I were to strip everything down, that's what brought me into the game, was Jesus. The thought that Jesus could love just a scumbag dirtbag like me. Oh my goodness. You know what I mean? Because I was raised Roman Catholic, and I had no chance of making it at all. Right. I was taught, like, if you pray enough, if you could do enough, then maybe you might get out of purgatory, So I lived with that, So Luther was a guy who was very similar to me. Like, man, I just forget about not being worthy. I didn't even think I came remotely close to having a shot. And I have to always go back to that, okay, he took that, do without a chance, and said, hey, you don't only have a chance, but you're my child. Not only a chance, but you're forgiven, and you've got everything you could possibly need. And this is how I want you to live, in light of that. So I would say to anybody, like, get in touch with that, and respect some older guys. Find some old dude who's wise, who's quiet, and just sit down. And I wish everybody would ask, like, tell me the stuff tell me what the stuff that you talk about with your wife after you talk to me, like let me have that, because I need that. I need that mirror, because I'm not always going to be honest with myself.
Sure.
That helps.
So I have a parallel insight here. Then I have a question on the importance of mentoring. I had a little bit of a parallel experience in my own life. I got saved when I was a senior in high school, and I went from there straight to Bible college in Georgia. I don't know if you've ever heard of Toccoa Falls College.
Okay. Yeah.
This was this was a Bible college.
Oh, gotcha.
There was no, girls did not go in guys' dorms. Like, you see this facial hair. You've got facial hair. Seth has facial hair. Like, you could not have facial hair. You didn't have TVs in your room. I mean, this was like serious. You had curfews, and I needed it at the time. So, but I guess my point is for me, the pendulum swung all the way over, and it took me years going through ministry to figure out that it's okay to be me. Now, one thing of clarity that I don't want our listeners to think that you being you means God gives you the license to live in your sin. And I know you're not saying that, but I just want to make that clear for people out there. What I hear you saying is when I hear the word you, I hear the word personality. And so if my story parallels yours, I have a more of an outgoing, boisterous personality. And it was that kind of thing. I was suffocating, becoming the woe is I Christian, thinking I was being humble. Yeah. And I remember my senior year of college, a guy that was raised in a church. He was really bright, and his dad was a pastor for years. And he made a comment once. It's weird how people make comments in passing that just stick with you. But he said something on the lines of, I like to have attention on me. And I was like, that was weird. That he said, I like to have attention. And I just thought about that. He was so okay with that aspect of his personality, whereas I was trying to suffocate that, and then, so that was important for me to hear someone that just embraced something where, again, on the pendulum of the pious Christian, we always want to swing it this way, quiet, reserved, humble, but he was okay with it going this way, saying, I just like to be the guy that gets the attention at a party. And I was like, well, he's okay with himself. He's not seeing that as something wrong or that is something to be ashamed of. He knew it about himself, and he embraced it. And then it took me about 8 years in ministry. I served at a church where the pastor had a very different personality than I, but I was so new to ministry that heavily influenced me to think that being a pastor meant acting just like that. And it took me a while to figure out that he's acting how, whatever his you is, that's who he is. That's how he's created. He's on the quiet side. He's on the reserved side. And I think most pastors probably are. I know we the ones we see online are the ones that are more charismatic. But I think generally speaking, your country churches, things like that, most pastors are a quiet, reserved type. But it was through that process to say, I'm shedding my own skin, realizing that I'm the you that I am is who God created me to be, But anyway, I just wanted to share, we have that parallel. I wanted folks out there to really understand that we're not giving you a license, that the you is not a license to go out and just say, hey, God saved me, I can live however I want. I know you're not saying that, but you never know for the listeners out there. I just want to.
Oh, sure. Yeah. And amen. And so true. Because the life he gives us is far better than any of that stuff that is part of that scene and part of that life, and for me, it was more like, hey, it's okay to like play your guitar and play it loud. And you don't have to, throw it all out and buy a spinet and play Bach, with a big weird wig or something,
It's funny because we had an exercise where we were challenged to bring all of our music and everything that was, ungodly. We were throwing it in bonfires. Yeah. And I still remember to this day how that pained me. And I'm like, oh man, I wish I had all those albums.
Which one are you sad about throwing in? Sorry, no, I won't put you on the spot, but there's a couple you're like, man, I wish I had that.
I'm going to use a lifeline and
and
pass on that
one. Perfect. Yeah. I mean, I got, I'll be honest, like full disclosure, I got rid of a lot of stuff too. Cause I had a lot of stuff that was, pretty sinister stuff, there's stuff that's angry and kind of, venting, but then there's stuff that's,
blatant.
Like Merciful Fate or something, kids don't Google that. That's terrible. But, and those are things that, so I've tried to say, okay, great musicians, but like that, I'm pretty sure those guys are worshiping the devil. Yeah. So I don't want to support that. But hey, here's the thing. I would love to have a conversation with those guys. I would love to just be able to sit in the room, with security around with that kind of thing. And, just really not even just me talk, but listen and hear what's going on. Yeah. Because, there's a stereotype they have of people like us. And one of my just greatest desires is that people would see that, we're not saying we're better. We're forgiven, right? We're loved. And yeah, we're not going to do certain things. I'm prepping my sermon this week. I'm in James 4, and he talks about, hey, there's the people that you left this life. There's people that are going to be kind of weirded out that you don't engage in the bad stuff with them. And so there's that part of it. Hey, I can't go with you. I can't, I'm gonna have to say that that's not right. That's wrong. And really what it is poison for your soul. So it goes beyond like naughty, and I've really started to see all those things, the anger and all the other things in my life, not just as societally unacceptable or inappropriate, but poison. Yeah. It was toxic. The Psalm, a scripture that really hits me more than any is Psalm where it says, against you only have I sinned. Right. A lot of times I'm upset about sin because of how someone else sees it or how they see me. But it's really how he sees it, and it offends my Father. And I should be tuned into that. And so hopefully that's running, some of the way that I look at life. And what I found is there's so many great bands that have faith, like there's a band I listen to a lot now. It's called they're Wolves at the Gate. You guys, any Wolves at the Gate? You guys like those guys?
I do. Yeah.
I mean, lyrically awesome. I mean, they're good on, they check all the boxes, man. And they're real deal. And the cool thing is they go out and they're not just playing churches, but they're out with other bands that maybe have a different point of view, and they're able to, kind of talk about it. I would love to sit down with Brian from Korn, with Head and Fieldy, who are still doing, kind of going back, but I love what Brian says. He says, he goes, because somebody was like, well, there's cursing and there's all this bad stuff. And he's like, and you know what did you ever see the interview where he says, like, these are my people?
Yep.
And I'm like, man, like, that's like the heart of God, right? He's like, these are my people. Like, that's how they talk. And I don't think he should necessarily talk that way necessarily, but that he wants to connect with them.
Yeah.
He wants to be, if he's not there, he can't talk to some kid who maybe he's going to hurt himself or hates himself, feels like everybody hates him. And imagine if like one of his heroes goes, hey man, I got a better way. God's got a better way.
Right.
Like that's game changer, man. That's like life changer.
Well, one of the things that I always appreciated and loved about Martin Luther, in his theology was that, he was a guy who constantly thought about when it came to things that were in the culture, when things that were going on in society. He didn't outright.
You mentioned the importance of a mentor. You mentioned an older person coming and speaking truth to you. Tell us briefly why you think that's important for every person to have in their life.
Oh man, it's so important. I got a good friend who's, he runs something called Local Mission. David Kim is his name. He's from Houston, Texas. And he kind of introduced me to this concept of everyone discipling someone. So we should all be discipling someone, and we should all be being discipled by someone, so because we're all part of this journey, right? We're still learning, all of us. That old guy hopefully has a mentor too. It's so important because, again, that guy's going to tell you stuff that no one else is going to tell you. He's not there to pat you on the back. He's not getting something from you. He's there to listen and to give you something that hopefully you give to someone else who's a little further, maybe not as far along in the journey. He needs something you got. You know what I mean? So I look at it, and it keeps you humble. And I think it keeps you hungry we often think like, oh man, I'm saved. And for us, the danger is, hey, I've even been to seminary. I've been saved. I'm like super dude saved, Iron Man saved, and it's like, okay, that's cool. But, there's a point where I need input all the time. When I get stale, it's because I stop growing, and a mentor keeps you growing, keeps you challenged, is going to point you to stuff that maybe you didn't know about, things that you didn't know about. And, so I think it's huge, to have. I don't think anybody should be, we shouldn't be going this alone. I don't think. We need each other. We need brothers, that we can pray with and that will, encourage us. I've got a couple of guys that like when COVID, I found this out when COVID hit. When COVID hit, I was like, oh man, what's going to happen? What are we going to do? And, it was that horrible decision that you guys had to make, I had to make, we all had to make. Do we totally shut down the building? Are we going online? Totally. I was so thankful for guys that I was in partnership with, that I could, reach out to and say, hey, like, what are you doing? I don't necessarily want to go with what the powers that be are saying I need to do. I want somebody boots on the ground who's in a parish like, a church thing like mine, who, you know what I mean? And I was able to navigate a lot of that because I had some guys that we bounced things off of each other too. So huge to have.
All right. Next question. This question is not for a Christian, but for a pastor. And here's the question.
Gotcha.
What is the one thing an outsider, like a non-church person, does not understand about pastoral ministry. Not about being a Christian, but about pastoral ministry.
Gotcha. Yeah, doing what we do. I would say, and it's a different answer, I think. Somebody at a giant church, and somebody with, kind of a more of the family guy, right? Or just that, but even them, one of the things I think people don't understand is all the different things that we do. I mean, you think about all the different things. You guys right now, you're doing IT, you're doing video editing, you wrote the things for this, you right? In addition to writing sermons and getting ready to teach classes, and we counsel, we may have to deal with financial issues, shovel the drive at church, the toilet gets clogged. Somebody did, I just heard some stats on this, and I think here's what they did. They had these like headhunter guys, like corporate, like job people, who hook companies up with CEOs. They had them walk around and follow pastors for like, I forget how long a time, but and all they did was just write down what they did. And you know what they said at the end of it? They said, this is insanity. You're asking one dude to do, like, he's got to have 64 core competencies. I think it was like 64 different like things that he's got to be killer at, or he's garbage. So I think there were like 13 competencies and like 64 different like job descriptions that you would have. Do you guys have like call documents? Do you get those? Like, is there some sort of thing your church says, hey, your pastors need to do this, 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 and this?
Yeah,
in your denomination?
Yeah, we have those. I think it's funny because sometimes I'll mention to people in terms of other jobs like CEO jobs and things like that. I will always say I can do that, and they say, well, how do you know? I say, if I can run my church, I can do that job in my sleep.
Yeah, that wouldn't be that tough because again they're very focused.
Well, the other element is when you say things, people have to listen to you.
Yeah, and that's
let's just start there, right? In a regular job, when you say things, people actually have to listen to you.
Yeah,
people listening to this are going, "Wow, yeah, gee, let's think about that for a second." You're dealing with all volunteers.
Yeah, and that's another. I didn't even think about that, but that's the other. If you add what I just talked about, and just the fact that almost everybody you have could just walk away, no firing necessary, just maybe a conversation, but there may not be even any in their mind any kind of accountability or repercussions. It's just like, well, we've heard it, right? I'm a volunteer, and I get that, right. and I respect that.
Yep. I just don't think, I think if people would just think about that aspect in their own job of doing your job with volunteers, just the huge effect that would have on how you do your job and can you do your job. Anyway, let's leave that as food for thought, because part of our podcast is not just for us to connect. We want to, give insight to the folks out there.
Yeah.
All right. So next question. We're still in the lightning round. Give me one or two elements of pastoral ministry that seminary did not ready you for.
Oh, wow. Seminary didn't get me ready to, seminary, I think it assumes you're going to have everything you need when you get in there, right? You're going to get to the kind of pre-made church. So you'll have a killer leadership team, elders that are just, like you got Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John as your elders.
You have the Apostle Paul on your missions board.
Yeah, and he's the education guy too. You got, Isaiah's doing the teaching, and when you got that, like it's the dream team, bro. And I think sometimes they feel like you're going to get out and get into there, and then you're like, oh my gosh, like there's places that have like none of that, or they have guys that maybe just need some training. So like leadership training, I really wish there was much more. They trained me as a leader, but they didn't train me how to train others. And I think even more importantly, to have a mindset
that's right. Ephesians, right? Equip the saints for the work of ministry. Like, we'll throw that passage out, but often I think seminaries look at it as that's talking about pastors. And I think, okay, no, I should be trained to be able to help the dad to be a better dad, right? A better husband.
Yeah.
You know, and how do I train that person that's going to train the, you know, ladies to be, you know, who they need to be, and the kids to be, you know, so that leadership training piece, I think, you know, that, and also the discipling thing, I think our emphasis was much more on, well, let me make sure you know how to teach. And I think I got one class in education. Like, think about that, like the amount of teaching, but then again, how does that fit in to discipleship and having an overall emphasis? I think that seminary just feels like, you know, well, we'll train the guy and he'll get out there and he'll just preach these great sermons and teach this stuff and it'll just happen.
Yeah.
But, you know, there's no like sort of overall focus that like it's the thing we're supposed to do is teach people to follow Jesus.
So an insight into that, I feel the same burden that you share. In fact, that has been the whole focus of my doctoral dissertation on bridging that gap of equipping pastors for real life on the ground ministry. Because, you know, when I read what Paul's writing, and when you look at Jesus dealing with his disciples, a large percentage is just leadership and management. It's like, can you get along with you? kind of important. I don't know why that wasn't addressed, you know, considering that we're going to be spending the large majority of our lives doing that. Anyway,
how do you deal with people? Yeah, how do you deal with people?
Exactly.
How do you have the hard conversations? How do you? It was very, I mean, awesome on theology, on how to preach, and all those things which are important. But I feel like, all that leadership training. How do I get people? Because again, a lot of I think every single church out there could be doing a whole lot more if, again, and the ones that are, I think, are the ones that have people that understand how to train, right? How to impart what they have. Most discipleship doesn't take place with buying the latest Zondervan book and say, well, we'll meet once a week and talk through it. It's, I was never taught at seminary that, hey, wow, you gotta you want to be a friend to that guy, and you're gonna show him what it looks like to be a parent and what it looks like to do his job, and he's gonna have access hopefully to your life. I mean, I don't see that in any curriculum that's out there. Yeah. I mean, there's stuff out there, but seminary certainly didn't nail that.
So on that note, in your opinion, what does the church as a whole in America need to hear right now? Like, if you could preach one sermon to every church in North America, what would it be about? Like, what would you want to say to all of them?
Well, I would rip this totally off of Matt Chandler. And this is something I heard on a leadership thing he did probably, when he was hanging out with Driscoll we're talking maybe 15 years ago. So this was earth shaking for me. Matt tells the story going to Village down there, being a guy from San Francisco, going to Texas, the whole cultural thing. And he went in and he started changing things, right? It was a church that was kind of declining, and he's like, hey, we're gonna darken the place, we're gonna have different music, we're gonna do all these things. And people got really angry with him, and started accusing him of stuff and whatnot. And he took the old guys out. He tells a story, and this, I would say this to the church, he sat down with them and he said, look, I get it. I get what you don't like. But I need you right now, for the foreseeable future, I need nothing else to matter but that people's souls are being saved by Jesus. I rewound that on my little MP3 player that I had. I had one of those little tiny little things, and I'm like, rewind, play again, rewind, play again. that nothing. And I'm like, holy cow, like that's been like the mantra or the sort of the thing on repeat in my loop in my head, that when things get crazy and people start fighting about this, I'm like, look, it's about Jesus saving people's souls. It's gotta be about that. There's all these other things like in the church that we gotta get back to that, right? To loving him and then loving the people around us, and not just, I mean, we got to start with loving each other. I think we do a better job at that, and at the same time, if we can like love the people and connect with the people outside of our walls, the world's watching, you know. And so I would say to the church, like, let's get serious about that Jesus thing. It's kind of important. It's in the name, Christian, you know, and really not just see it as for us, but you know, imagine if every single person, every single church just said, man, I wish that today somebody who doesn't know Jesus would know him and have the faith and the hope that I have. Man, how things would change, right? I think churches, you'd have wholesale like churches saying, look, man, our whole mission is to us. How do we make it to them? So, I mean, that would be my, if you gave me the mic, that's what I'd probably say.
And I like that. I mean, Jesus made it pretty clear that his heart was that. You know, he said in Luke, I think 19:10, he says that the Son of Man has come to seek and to save that which is lost. It's a pretty clear mission statement, right? I mean, it's not confusing in any way, shape, or form. It's like, here's the reason why I'm here, to seek and to save that which is lost. In fact, when you get to James, he closes out his text in chapter 5 by saying, and I'm going to read it, this might be a cool place to stop. He says, my brothers, if any among you strays from the truth and one turns him back, let him know that he who turns a sinner from the error of his way will save his soul from death and will cover a multitude of sins. And he ends there. Like, what a weird way to end, but I think one of the reasons why he ends there is because he wants to keep the last thing that they hear the most important thing, right? It's the very last thing out of his mouth, or I guess out of his pen, right? And so he wants that to be a resounding gong in their heart and mind, saying, hey, look, we can't lose sight of the mission, because when we lose sight of the mission, it's just going to be all about us. And churches need reminded of that. And I think that's what Chandler was doing. And so maybe one day, hey, maybe through this is going to serve many as a reminder for that.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah, and just experiencing it on a deep personal level, you know. We don't run. I always have to remember, like, we're not running a business that let's say services Volvos. Okay, that's weird, I know, but you know, let's say, you know, like that's all we do. Like yeah, I don't have a Volvo, so I don't need, you know. So it's not really personal. Now I might be out there working on Volvos, but I don't have a Volvo. I don't really care about that. It's like I need, like he did that for me, you know, which I think, you know, if you look at any industry that's really going well, I think it's the person who started it and runs it has been deeply affected by whatever he or she is sharing or selling or you know, is about. You know, those are the people we want to talk to, right? Those are the things we want to watch. You know, they're not just the hair club for men president, but they're a member.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, dude, I got hair. I didn't get hair through that, but you know, somebody's saying it's not just this detached thing. Like, and I think we got to get back to that and say, you know, he is busy. If I'm following him, he's busy seeking and saving the lost. So if I'm following him, you know, as he's right alongside me, I'm going to be doing that too.
Yeah.
You know, so simple, right, guys?
It is in a way. You know, we make it complicated, but before we close,
my goodness, dude.
Before we close the show, is it possible for you to pick up that guitar, plug it in, and close us off with like a face shredding, you know, something you can melt our face with, or maybe like Eddie Van Halen's Eruption? How long will it take you to plug that in and close us off with that? Or is that impossible where you're sitting right now?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I could probably try
Do
to
it.
See. Let's see. We can get.
He's been waiting for this question the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, it's tubed, so it takes a second to heat up.
That's a nice amp, by the way.
Yeah, it's like my dream amp. It's like just incredible. I'll let you guys see what the guitar looks like too.
Yeah.
So there it is.
Awesome. Hey, thank you so much.
It's awesome.
It was so nice having you as a guest. I know would you be open to doing this in the future?
Sure. It's always fun, man. Talking stuff, especially something that might help. You know, because I've been helped by. I mean, there's like so many. All of us, right? Have Seth and I were talking about guitar. You know, Rick Beato and some of those other guys. It's such a blessing, man, out there right now. We're living in such a great time where, I mean, there's a billion books, but then there's a billion podcasts and videos and things. So we can be part of that.
Awesome. All right, well, you have yourself a fantastic day, sir. And thank you so much for doing this. You were awesome.
Well, hey, thank you guys. You guys are too kind, and God's peace, and keep rolling, man. I'll be watching. I love what you guys are doing. It's awesome.
Very good.
Thank you.
Awesome.
This is Anthony and Seth signing off at Engaged Podcast. Like and subscribe if you've been blessed, and we'll see you next week.
See you.